And next up, we are joined virtually, unfortunately, by Alexandra Deschamps-Sonsino, who it was meant to be here today, but is unfortunately feeling a little bit under the weather, like I said, but is going to be talking virtually. So hopefully Alex can hear us. Alex, do you want to give a thumbs up if you can? Amazing. And then hopefully we can hear you now as well. Over to you.
Hi, thank you for having me. And so sorry to not be with you. It would have been so cool. Isn't Dominique doing an amazing job? My name is Alex. I was the organizer and curator of the meetup for many, many years. And so delighted to have been able to hand over to Dominique, who's doing an amazing job. I thought I would pick up on a couple of things. The great thing about being after Nick is that it's so much more relaxing because it's really not that technical. So I am just going to share my screen now, and it is disabled. So you may need to enable that for me. Someone. I'll keep talking. I wrote a book in 2018 called Smarter Homes, and that was a book that was really a historic view or exploration of how the home had developed from a technological standpoint. And what I wanted to do is just sort of share some thoughts on more recently. We've just had COP26. Some of you might have actually been there. I had the pleasure of working on a project that was installed during that week. And I think that there's a lot to say about the conversation between smart home and climate change. And I thought I would share some thoughts on that. So I can now share my screen. Great. So let me just... I'll just kind of go through. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a consultant based in South London. Unfortunately, I think I have norovirus, and so I really didn't want to give that to anyone in the room. And I have worked across lots of different aspects of IoT. I was the first UK distributor of the Arduino, which some of you may be familiar with. I was also more recently head of labs at Bulb in 2018, so don't come at me with your questions. I don't know. I have done more recently work with a social enterprise called Library of Things, which is kind of IoT for communities, and some work with the BBC. And Smarter Homes is one of 3 books I have written around this space. Super quickly, because I love to stick to my time. What I think is really interesting is this is a historic view of the home. And I think that we're coming back to this. And so the bulk of my talk is just mainly making this point that we started out by trying to treat the home as a pseudo factory floor, and we're going to end up right back here. So hold on to this image. This is from Christine Frederick, who was an advertiser. She ran the first women-led advertising company in New York in the early 1900s. She was also a journalist and an author. And she designed this efficient kitchen based on studies that she did inside her own home. She turned her own home into an experimental kitchen space because at the time there were tax breaks for doing so. And her view of treating this as a sort of space that you can not only measure, but also see in this way, I think is something that some of you might be familiar with, but most of us don't necessarily have to encounter every day. We live in our homes. We don't live in a planned view of our homes. We also have a lot of technology that's emerged very recently. This is the first example of the use of smart that I could find when I was doing my research. And this is from the National Home Builders Association in the United States in 1987 as part of a conference that they ran. So we've got, 30-odd, 40-odd sort of years, almost 40 years of conversations around smartness in the home. How far have we gotten really is a really interesting question. While in some geographies, this is a US example, and I'd like to highlight, I'm not American, I'm Canadian. In this example, you can see that in some geographies around the world, real estate has kept increasing. So we kept sort of both filling our homes with stuff, but also, of course, all of our household bills have increased over that period of time. I'm going to skip over some of this because of time. How our homes specifically contribute to climate change, I think there's a bunch of different ways. Obviously, we're in a world where things are no longer dumb. I don't need to tell you this. We're at an IoT meetup. Everything is always on all the time. This is a nod to a startup called Thinkton that doesn't exist anymore, but was really a cool idea. The idea that we have things that are constantly connected to the grid is, I think, something we live with, but we don't necessarily fully acknowledge. Also, the fact that our grid is not green at all. It doesn't matter who your retailer is. This is the grid tonight. So this is a screenshot I took of the national grid at 5:35 tonight. Fossil fuels galore tonight. If you're single or you're much older and you're living with your spouse in a home, chances are you spend more energy than others. And there's lots of research as to why our behavior in the home, some of it kind of makes sense energetically and some of it really doesn't. Older people feel the cold more, and people living on their own decide to put on a wash, a segregated wash for every color, every type, everything. Whereas if you're a busy mom with 5 kids, you just dump everything in and you do one wash and you're actually more effective. Your home also is leaking energy in all the usual ways, but probably not the ones that you think. Some buildings that are built after World War II are actually worse than buildings built before 1919. And, we have vampire power. Of course, I've alluded to things being always on. We are constantly charging things at different times. I don't need to go into this because I think everyone is super familiar with these kind of conversations, but web services are also a way of outsourcing your energy use to other people's data centers. And soon enough, your car, if you decide to change into an EV, and I'm very happy to talk about EVs until the cows come home because that was the bulk of the work I did at Bulb, your car, contributes and will contribute to that energy spend. So what can we do about it, or what are some of the interesting things coming up that I can see? I think there's lots of interesting micro behaviors that people could be doing, but don't necessarily either want to do or have not been really clearly informed that they are useful. And all this stuff sits in really inelegant websites run by mostly charities, which drives me insane. There is something, though, that's also really tangible, which is your EPC, your Energy Performance Certificate. Chances are, if you have moved since 2010, some of you might not, if you've moved homes, one of these will be given to you. There's 2 pages. First page is the one that gives you an efficiency rating from A to G. And the second page gives you instructions and kind of ideas of what to do and actually tangible. And you've got a thing at the bottom of this particular page which show you the savings every year, but obviously it doesn't show you the cost. Lots of you also will have been given or imposed a smart meter in the past few years that comes with a consumer unit, one very technical word for just a display. There's something called a rebound effect where people get one of these, thinks it's interesting for 2 weeks, and then shoves it in a corner or disconnects it, because if you're a middle-class person attending an IoT conference in the middle of London, you do not really care about your household bills. They're on direct debit. They correspond to less than 10% of your outgoings, and so all of this, kind of exists. It's data that exists, and schemes that come and go, really unsuccessful schemes that come and go, that encourage people to actually care and dig a little bit deeper into what their homes are actually made of, and also what could be improved, whether that's double glazing, home insulation and wall insulation, or getting rid of entirely your gas boiler. And all of this is super expensive. In the country, in the UK, only a third of people have less than £1,500 in savings. Most of this involves an expense of more than £5,000 minimum. So we've got a real sort of conversation to have about what financial instruments are available. And all of this stuff is slowly but surely, not by IoT companies, but by financial institutions being captured. The latest and greatest in the world of finance is the idea of a building passport, a home passport, a logbook, call it whatever you want. People have different kind of names for it, but really it's a way of capturing in data what happens to a home, whether any improvements are in fact made, and how those improvements are translating either into lower bills or not. And people are spending a huge amount of time, a huge amount of energy thinking about what the tools to present to a homeowner or a tenant could be. One of those companies is a company called Chimney and another company called XBIM. They have both won Innovate UK money and are going to be running a workshop, which I am running tomorrow morning from 11 to 1 p.m. And they're one of many actors in this space. So if it's something that is interesting to you, I really recommend that you Google building passports or logbooks. And that should give you sort of the kinds of actors that are looking at what we can do to represent a home digitally only, start to make assumptions about its energy effectiveness, and start to push people into making investments either that that relate to improving the property, or even sometimes punish people because you won't be able to get a mortgage for certain properties that are less than a certain EPC rating. This hasn't happened in the UK yet, but this has happened in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, if you own a commercial building that is less than C rated, you cannot sell it. You cannot get any kind of financing for it. They kind of stopped short of saying that was also something that was applicable to homes, but it's just a matter of time. And I think in this country, because of the type of housing stock that we have, it's going to be a long time before we see that. But that gathering of data, I think, is already happening and is, something that's exciting, hopefully. So this is the slide you should take a picture of if you're interested in joining tomorrow, bimforhousing.eventbrite.co.uk. And you should definitely check out Chimney, and XBIM have a bunch of technical documentation online. And that is it from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Does anyone have any questions for Alex? You can hear us, so that would be great if anyone did. Oh, come on.
I know, because I'm not in the room to bully them. That's why.
I know. We can pretend. No, thanks so much for sharing a bit more about what you're working on, Alex, and also the link to the event tomorrow. A few people did take pictures of that, so hopefully you'll get some people joining there. If you send it to me, I can also send it around later on. Is there anything else that you could share about what you're working on coming up next, or?
I mean, always around for conversations with people about their really interesting projects. I'm all about the built environment and technology, and I think a lot of people know that. So, do hit me up. I'm IoT Watch on Twitter, and if you've got a kind of climate-related project that uses technology, I want to hear about it.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the room that's currently working on anything in that space at the moment? Oh. We'll just say everyone's very shy today. Okay.
That's okay. And there's if you're interested in what people are doing in the climate change and IoT space, there's something called CAT London, which is Climate Action Tech London, and is a really great group of people who are doing really interesting stuff around conservation technologies. Ben Ward, who I think may or may not be in the room, could talk at great lengths around preventing flooding with IoT. So there's loads of really interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, definitely. It's great to hear about these use cases and kind of applications of IoT that are, making some sort of difference in this crazy world. Thank you so much, Alex. And I hope you feel better very, very soon. But thanks for dialing in virtually, and thanks for the kind words at the beginning.
Thanks for having me, Dominique.
Thank you
Enjoy the event.
much. Yeah, thank you.